The collapse of 2026. January 2026. The world wakes up to another ordinary Monday. Stock markets open in Tokyo, then London, then New York. Screens glow their familiar green and red. Analysts on financial networks speak with their usual calm authority, discussing quarterly earnings, interest rate projections, employment figures. Coffee shops fill with workers scrolling through market apps. Retirement accounts show steady numbers. Everything appears normal. But beneath the surface of these numbers, beneath the confident voices and the glowing screens, something fundamental is already dying. Trust. For decades, the global economy has been held together by one fragile promise, repeated so often it became invisible. Debt can always be paid later. Governments printed money to fund programs they couldn't afford. Corporations borrowed endlessly to fuel expansion and buybacks. Consumers lived on credit cards, student loans, mortgages that stretched across generations. The system didn't grow stronger through this expansion. It simply grew larger. And size, as we're about to learn, is not the same as strength. By early 2026, global debt has reached $350 trillion, more than 3 times the world's entire economic output. The tower is complete. Now comes the fall. Phase 1, the debt snap. February 2026. It starts quietly, the way most collapses do. A mid-sized European bank announces it's restructuring bonds from several developing nations. The word restructuring is financial code for "we're not getting paid." Within days, 3 major corporations, names you'd recognize, companies that seemed invincible, missed debt payments. Not small companies. Giants. One is a retail empire that expanded too fast. Another is a tech firm that borrowed billions for acquisitions that never paid off. The third is a real estate conglomerate sitting on properties no one wants to buy. At first, financial media calls these isolated incidents. But isolation is an illusion in a connected world. These corporations owe money to banks. Those banks owe money to other banks. Those banks manage pension funds. Those pension funds hold the retirement savings of millions of teachers, nurses, factory workers who've spent 30 years building a future. By mid-February, bond markets begin to freeze. For those unfamiliar with bonds, think of them as the bloodstream of the financial system. Bonds are how governments and corporations borrow money. They're considered safe, stable, boring. Until they're not. When bondholders realize they won't be repaid, they stop buying. When they stop buying, borrowers can't refinance their debts. When they can't refinance, they default. 1 default becomes 5. 5 becomes 50. Pension funds, the ones managing retirement money for millions, see their holdings evaporate. Insurance companies, which invested heavily in these safe bonds, suddenly face insolvency. Banks, already nervous, stop trusting each other's solvency. The interbank lending market, where banks loan each other money overnight to maintain operations, grinds to a halt. And when banks stop trusting banks, the entire economy stops breathing. Credit freezes. Loans disappear. Businesses can't make payroll. The machine doesn't just slow down. It seizes. Phase 2, the currency war. March 2026. Governments and central banks face an impossible choice. Let the system collapse completely or intervene. They choose intervention, the only option they know. They print. The Federal Reserve announces a $2 trillion emergency lending program. The European Central Bank follows with €1 trillion. The Bank of Japan, the People's Bank of China, all of them open the floodgates. Money pours into the system like water into a sinking ship. But here's what they don't say in the press conferences. This isn't rescue. It's dilution. When you create trillions in new currency but don't create new value, you don't create wealth. You destroy savings. The dollar weakens against commodities. The euro slides against the yuan. The yuan slides against the dollar. It becomes a race to the bottom, every nation trying to devalue their currency to make their exports cheaper and their debt loads lighter. Currency war sounds abstract, theoretical. Until you try to buy milk. By late March, people begin to notice. Not economists, not analysts, ordinary people. A gallon of milk that cost $4 in January costs $7 in March. Gasoline jumps from $3.50 a gallon to $8 in 2 weeks. Beef becomes a luxury. Imported goods, electronics, clothing, coffee, either double in price or disappear from shelves entirely. Then the medicine shortages begin. Insulin, manufactured in 3 countries and distributed globally, becomes scarce. Chemotherapy drugs, antibiotics, blood pressure medication, supply chains fracture. Hospitals begin rationing. For those with savings, the horror is quiet and personal. A teacher who spent 40 years building a retirement fund of $300,000 watches its purchasing power cut in half in 8 weeks. It's still $300,000 on paper. But paper is all it is. Money hasn't disappeared. Value has. Phase 3, the market crash. April 2026. The stock market, until now volatile but functioning, finally breaks. It starts with a hedge fund, one of the largest in the world, managing $200 billion in assets. They've made a massive bet on corporate debt remaining stable. They're wrong. When they announce liquidation, it triggers algorithmic trading systems designed to protect against losses. These algorithms don't think. They react. And they react fast. Sell orders flood the market. Millions of transactions per second. Stock prices don't decline, they collapse. The S&P 500 drops 12% in one day. Circuit breakers designed to halt trading during extreme drops trigger 3 times. It doesn't help. When New York closes, the panic jumps to Asia. Tokyo's Nikkei opens and immediately crashes 9%. Hong Kong follows. Then Europe. By the end of the week, global stock markets have lost $18 trillion in value. 18 trillion. That's more than the entire GDP of China. Tech giants announce layoffs, not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. Amazon, 40,000 jobs. Meta, 30,000. Google, 25,000. The layoffs cascade down. Smaller companies with no reserves shut down entirely. Startups that were valued at billions go bankrupt overnight. Within 3 weeks, unemployment in the United States jumps from 4% to 11%. In Europe, it's worse, 15%. 20 million people in the developed world lose their jobs in a single month. These aren't statistics. They're families who can't pay rent. They're parents who can't feed children. They're professionals in their 50s who will never find equivalent work again. And for those who kept their jobs, their retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, pension funds, are devastated. A portfolio that was worth $800,000 in January is worth $300,000 in April. Retirements are canceled. Dreams dissolve. The future as people imagined it ceases to exist. Phase 4, the supply chain break. May 2026. When money breaks, movement breaks. Global supply chains, those invisible networks that deliver everything from iPhones to insulin, are built on credit. Ships need fuel. Fuel needs payment. Payment needs functioning banks. Banks are paralyzed. Major shipping companies announce they're suspending routes to high-risk regions. High risk means anywhere they doubt they'll be paid. Factories in Asia shut down, not because of war or disaster, but because they can't secure financing for raw materials. Manufacturing doesn't stop everywhere, but it stops enough. By mid-May, grocery stores start showing gaps. Not empty shelves, not yet, but absences. Certain fruits disappear. Specific brands of cereal vanish. Coffee becomes expensive, then scarce. Meat sections thin out. Gas stations implement purchase limits. 10 gallons per customer. Lines form at 6 a.m. Not because there's no oil, there's plenty of oil. But the distribution system depends on credit, and credit has collapsed. The medication shortages deepen. Pharmacies post lists of unavailable drugs. Diabetes patients ration insulin. Cancer patients miss chemotherapy doses. The medical system doesn't collapse, but it begins a slow, agonizing triage. Fear spreads faster than any shortage. Even where shelves are still full, people start hoarding. Bottled water, canned goods, rice, batteries. Governments issue calm statements. Supply chains are resilient. Temporary disruptions. No need for panic buying. No one listens, because people can see with their own eyes that the system is failing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Phase 5, the political meltdown. June 2026. Economic collapse never stays economic. When people lose jobs, savings, and security, they look for answers. They look for blame. Protests erupt in capitals across the world. Paris, London, New York, Sao Paulo, Mumbai. The protests start peacefully, demands for relief, for accountability, for action. But peaceful doesn't last when police meet crowds with force. Riots break out. Not everywhere, but enough. Nations begin turning inward. Borders tighten. Immigration quotas shrink to zero in some countries. Trade agreements, negotiated over decades, are suspended temporarily. Temporary becomes permanent. Political extremism surges. When the center cannot hold, people run to the edges. Nationalist parties gain power in Europe. Authoritarian voices grow louder in Asia and South America. In the United States, both political parties fracture internally. The 2026 midterm elections become a referendum on rage. The blame game begins. Banks blame governments for excessive regulation. Governments blame corporations for excessive greed. Corporations blame workers for unrealistic wage demands. Workers blame everyone for a rigged system. International cooperation, the foundation of the post-World War II order, crumbles. The G20 summit in July ends in failure. Nations can't agree on coordinated response. Each country prioritizes its own survival. The global system, built on cooperation and mutual benefit, starts behaving like a battlefield. Trade becomes a weapon. Aid becomes leverage. Alliances fracture. History shows us what comes next in scenarios like this. Economic collapse creates desperation. Desperation creates conflict. Conflict creates war. By summer 2026, border disputes heat up. Resource competition intensifies. Old grievances resurface. The world hasn't descended into global war. Not yet. But the ingredients are mixing. Phase 6, the digital shock. July 2026. In desperation, governments push digital controls. They call it modernization. They call it security. But everyone knows what it really is. Control. Bank withdrawals are limited to $500 per day. Cash transactions above $1,000 are flagged and reported. Digital wallets become mandatory for certain government benefits. Spending is monitored. Purchases are tracked. Privacy becomes a relic of a more trusting time. Then, on July 18th, it happens. A major cyber incident hits a global payment processing network. No one knows if it's a state actor, a criminal group, or just system failure under strain. It doesn't matter. For 6 hours, digital payments stop. Credit cards don't work. Digital wallets won't load. Bank transfers fail. ATMs go dark. For 6 hours, in a world that's gone almost entirely cashless, money simply doesn't move. Grocery stores can't process transactions. Gas stations shut down. Restaurants close. 6 hours. That's all it takes for people to realize something terrifying. Money isn't real. It's not gold in a vault. It's not even paper in your hand. It's just numbers in a computer. And computers can fail. When the system comes back online, something fundamental has changed. Trust is gone. Not just in banks or governments. Trust in the basic infrastructure of modern life. People start keeping cash what little they can get. Barter networks form in neighborhoods. Local currencies appear. The digital economy was supposed to be the future. Instead, it becomes another point of failure. The real collapse in the aftermath. August 2026. The collapse of 2026 isn't about numbers on screens. It's not about stock prices or GDP figures. It's about faith. Faith that your salary will arrive next week. Faith that your savings will be there next year. Faith that your government knows what it's doing. Faith that tomorrow will resemble today. That faith, built over decades of relative stability, breaks in months. And when faith breaks, everything follows. By late 2026, the world is fundamentally different. Poorer, yes, but also more awake. The illusion of infinite growth has died. The myth of too big to fail has been exposed. The promise that experts have everything under control has shattered. New systems emerge from the ruins. Local economies replace global supply chains. Communities that once relied on distant corporations start producing essentials locally. Farmers' markets aren't trendy, they're necessary. Neighbors who never spoke become essential networks. Political systems transform. In some places, this means authoritarianism, strong leaders promising order through force. In others, it means radical democracy, communities taking direct control of their futures. Old institutions lose legitimacy. New ones struggle to be born. The aftermath isn't uniform. Some nations fall into chaos they'll take decades to escape. Others adapt, reorganize, and build something new. Resource-rich countries leverage their position. Technology hubs maintain relative stability. But the global middle class, the billions who lived in relative comfort, are devastated. Individuals adapt too. Skills become more valuable than credentials. Communities become more important than careers. Resilience replaces growth as the measure of success. History doesn't end in 2026. Humanity doesn't disappear. We're too stubborn, too adaptable, too irrationally optimistic for that. But an era ends. The era of endless credit, infinite growth, and unquestioned faith in complex systems. That era is over. What comes next is still being written. The question is, by whom? The collapse of 2026 is a scenario, not a prediction. But the vulnerabilities are real. The systems are fragile. And the time to build resilience is before the crisis, not during it.